Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
Tuesday, May 19th at 10:30 a.m., it's morning baseball. Wednesday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m., have a pawsome time at Bark in the Park. Thursday, May 21st at 6:30, it's Pride Night with $5 Bud or Bud Light draft beer. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Huge news happening with a lot of these races of late, a lot of the primaries. Over the weekend, there was the big one in Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, who voted to impeach President Trump. Well, it's see ya for Bill Cassidy.
No, how do you say it? Payback time.
Payback time. Yep. He came in number 3, John, in the race, for the primary there. And the Trump-backed candidate handily came in number 1. Well, joining us to talk about the power of Trump is Ari Fleischer, a former White House press secretary. Ari, this was definitely a win for President Trump. And then tomorrow night, you got Massey. That's a big one, who's been a big adversary of his. But Trump is clearly sending a message saying, look, you got to be in line. And also, if you look at what happened in Indiana, he had some big wins there. He's on a roll.
Yeah, he's on a roll within his own party. He's been on that roll since he came down the escalator, you could say. It really is an amazing thing. I've worked in politics a long time. I don't think I've ever seen such devotion to a president. Now, in part because the base loves him, and in part, to be fair, the base has shrunk. A lot of the college-educated suburban voters who used to be more or less establishment Republicans have left the party. And so those who remain are the ones who are really loyal to President Trump. And if you're a Republican, you better not cross him.
So the ones that left, where did they go? Because they're certainly not finding a home with the party of Jasmine Crockett and AOC.
Well, sadly, they are. I think they won't like those guys, but the Democratic Party has an element to it now that it used to be the college-educated suburban Republican voter. And what's really happened, Rita, is the two parties have changed bases. Republicans used to be the party of the college-educated, upper-income suburban voter. No, those people are Democrats. The one group, Harris, did better than Biden.
You mean the ones protesting at Black Lives Matter and everywhere else?
Oh, yeah, the No Kings people. Yeah, all those gray-haired, blue-haired, purple-haired. They were kind of the Republican suburban base. And the college grads. Republicans are now the party of the working class, blue collar voter, and so that's been the change. And those voters are very loyal to President Trump. It's a new day in politics to be a Republican.
And we have George Venizelos, who's with the FBI for decades.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think the future is what I'm worried about. These young kids, will they come around and come back? We see in New York, for example, the young kids that put this mayor in power. It's the young kids that are starting to speak up and be more interested in politics where they weren't so during our day.
They're up for grabs. And President Trump did a great job in moving young voters in the 2024 election. Right now, all signs in 2026 look like they're moving back toward the Democrat camp. But that's okay. These fights don't just crisply end in 2 years and a new pattern is set for the next generation. They're jump ball and they're worth fighting over. And that's where Republicans have got to get together and define who they are going to be as a party in the post-Trump world. It's going to be a populist, working class, much more blue-collar party. And Democrats have this great problem, which Republicans need to take advantage of, where socialism is dominating and defining who they are. And so that's going to be the shape of politics to come.
We had someone on last week, do you remember, guys, who said it's going to be a choice in November of sane and insane.
I think that's what it comes to.
Common sense versus crazy.
What's happening the Democratic Party is being run by the Democratic Socialists. And the only way that the Democratic Party can make a comeback is what happened in 1984 when Reagan won 49 states and actually almost won the 50th state, too.
Yeah, it's not just socialists. It's also anti-Semites. The Democratic Party has turned its back on Israel. It's really hard to find a pro-Israel supporter inside the Democratic Party anymore. And if you're not a socialist, you're a progressive. And if you're a progressive, that means you want men to compete against women in sports, you're for open borders. I mean, John Fetterman is the only Democrat left who just sounds different, but he's really just an echo of the Democrats from 10, 15, 20 years ago. The things that Bill Clinton used to regularly say.
Yep.
That tells you how far the Democrats have changed.
Yeah, boy, have they ever. Judge Weinberg.
All right, good to talk to you again. So what do you think is going on in California? Does a Republican have a chance of winning the gubernatorial election? Does a mayor, can we have a mayor who's a Republican in L.A.?
Well, it sure looks like Steve Hilton, one of the two Republicans running for governor, is going to make the runoff. The top two finishers running against each other. Is there a chance that Republicans, because the Democrats are so divided, can get the top two spots and lock out the Democrats? I don't think so. I think that's too much of a wish come true, and it looks like Hilton is pulling ahead a little bit in the Republican primary. But boy, would that be a massive blow to the Democrats. So much that Gavin Newsom has already said that he's got a plan for in case that happens, how to prevent it from happening, even though that's the law of California.
How does he do that, Ari?
Yeah, he didn't say, right, what his plan was. He said, I have a plan, right? But then he didn't reveal what it was.
Well, the smartest betting I've seen is they're going to rush something that goes to a referendum that would allow them, the voters, to say, no, we're no longer having the two-party system. But I think it's going to be kind of like the two top leader system. I think that's going to be kind of like Virginia, and it would get struck down in the courts because it's just such a blatant.
Yeah, but how do you impact the primary?
Eliminate an election.
Yeah, how do you impact when you have the election and you have the jungle primary, which would bring you the two top voters? How do they do it in a referendum in November retroactively? I just don't see that.
That's the point. It's the retroactive. That's where I think that I don't know how they can do it. But, it's California. California courts and their California governor.
And Ari, I know you're not necessarily a fan of the redistricting, but I got to get your reaction to some of the rhetoric out there. I was watching over the weekend, and you could see now the next one is South Carolina. Of course, we know what happened in Virginia. That got shot down for the Democrats. When it looked good for them at first, remember when it first was in their favor, they went, oh, this is great. And then when the Supreme Court came in, oh, this is terrible. The latest now in South Carolina, and it's the Jim Clyburn seat, they're calling it Jim Crow 2.0 because the Republican, I mean, come on. It is so like, boy, if they could have carved it out, they would have been heroes.
Anytime they see a bird on a telephone wire, they call it Jim Crow 2.0. There's nothing they don't call Jim Crow 2.0. Look, I'm 100% in favor of the Supreme Court ruling that said you're not allowed to discriminate when you draw a line on the basis of race. You cannot have majority black districts by design. I'm 100% in favor of that, and much of the redistricting now is in reaction to the court ruling to properly draw lines that aren't based on discrimination. That's what's happening in many of the southern states. That's what just happened in Tennessee, South Carolina, as you just point out. What I'm not a fan of, Rita, as you know, is redistricting every 2 years by whoever is in power just to keep power. Redistricting outside of a court order ought to be every 10 years after the census, because I think even politics has to have rules. And are we going to do all this again in 2028 and then 2030 and 32 and 34 and 36? I just don't see how that's good for anybody, and I'm still for the few things that unite us as a country. And one of them
it still bothers me. It still bothers me that we're counting migrants into the census. Where I mean, it just doesn't make sense that you count the migrants into the census and you have more congressmen in a blue state because of that.
No, I agree with that. But bear in mind, a lot of those migrants are coming into Texas or Florida and other places too. So it's not as if, despite the good efforts of the governors down there to send them to blue states, so the blue states realize what was happening during the Biden years, they're not only going to blue states. But I agree with you 100% that for the purpose of deciding who is a United States congressman, however many foreigners are in the United States, should not count.
100%. Well, Ari Fleischer, thank you for coming on. Thank you for speaking out for America and the American citizen. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, Ari.
My pleasure,
Thank you.
guys. Always
Thank
great
you.
to be with you.